Delegates from South Korea and the DPRK have gathered at the International Olympic Committee headquarters in Switzerland. The IOC president hosted a mini-summit for next month's PyeongChang Winter Olympics. Just last week, officials from South Korea and the DPRK met to hash out the details of Pyongyang's participation. So for the latest on this story, let's go now live to our correspondent, Natalie Carney, who's standing by for us in Switzerland. So Natalie, good to have you with us. South Korea and the DPRK already held talks. So what issues will be discussed today?
Well, as you can see from the action behind me, we are expecting the press statement from the president of the IOC, Thomas Bach, very, very soon. And essentially what we are expecting is to get a bit more clarity of the proposals and agreements that were made between the DPRK and South Korea and whether those conflict with any IOC policy. As you mentioned, there have been 3 high-level meetings between the National Olympic Committees of the DPRK and South Korea in regards to Pyongyang's attendance and participation in next month's Olympics. Those committees decided and proposed to form a joint women's ice hockey team, as well as agreed to allow their athletes to march together at the opening ceremony in PyeongChang. Yet some are arguing that the DPRK's sort of late decision to enter into these games sort of goes against the fairness of the games themselves. Technically, none of their athletes are qualified to take part in the Olympics. They missed the October 30th deadline, and making the IOC's job and decision today much, much more difficult and complicated, and will set a very problematic precedent in the future if these proposals are allowed in, because clearly some rules will have to be bent.
Yeah, without question, Natalie, and yet the DPRK's participation is also a sign of a possible fall there on the peninsula. So even though technically no DPRK athlete is qualified for the Games, what kind of resolution can we expect from the IOC?
Well, yes, as you rightly mentioned, it is being widely seen, the DPRK's agreement to join the Olympics as sort of a way of trying to ease the tensions between the two neighbors. But it's really hard to say how the IOC is going to go about this. As I said, it's going to send a very awkward precedent because rules will have to be bent if the proposals made by the two Koreas are approved by the DPRK. The IOC spokesman did acknowledge that there are considerations with regard to the impact that these proposals will have on other participating athletes and nations. Again, we are just preparing right now for the press statement by the IOC president, which we are expecting at any moment. The women's hockey team officials are opposed to this late addition. The head of the South Korean women's team basically said that adding somebody so close to the Olympics is very dangerous for the team's chemistry. The South Korean women's hockey team is now 22 players. That could increase and expand to as many as 35 players if the DPRK's women's hockey team is allowed to take part. So again, some very technical details that have to be thrashed out today, and we are expecting at any moment to get more clarity on those.
Okay, we'll see what those officials say there. Okay, Natalie Carney with the latest for us in Switzerland. Thank you.